So I imagine right about now, some of you might be asking yourself, how exactly does a prisoner become known as the worm dude? Well, I'll tell you, 13 years ago when I came into the prison system, I wasn't looking for one of those cool, tough guy handles like Spike or Mayhem. But I'm pretty sure if I could have chosen a name, it wouldn't have been the worm dude. It all started about 4 years ago with a little handful of worms and a big idea. In 2010, our captain at the time, Captain Hardina, put together a committee of staff and inmates to look into the area of sustainability. This was part of a larger statewide effort championed by the Sustainability in Prisons Project. Now, we found that this place was spending about $65,000 a year on food waste disposal. So we did some research, found out that worms, composting worms, will eat an incredible amount of food waste every day. So we set out to see what it would take to build a vermiculture program. The first thing that we discovered is that if we were going to make a dent, we were going to need a lot of worms, millions. So my buddy Rory and I went over to the hobby shop, got some donated materials, and built the first worm bin. Then the horticulture teacher from Edmonds Community College brought us in 200 worms from his home bins. Now, tragically, these are the first of many entirely innocent worms sentenced to life in prison. Officer Art King is now retired, but he was the champion of this program and became its most passionate supporter. Then Miss Donna Simpson caught the worm fever, and we were off and running. Now, we don't have any budget for this program, so for the first 2 years, we basically just read everything we could about worms and made sure our little buddies were happy and multiplying. 4 years after starting with those original 200 worms, we now have over 6 million worms and the capacity to process over 10,000 pounds of food waste every month. This is our worm farm. Now, everything you see here is made exclusively from discarded materials. Old food carts, laundry bins, mattress parts. Basically, if somebody was throwing it away, we found a way to make a worm bin out of it. We spent virtually no money to build this program. Now, the worm farm is basically broken up into 3 areas. Our first objective is to try and reduce as much of the food waste leaving the institution as possible. Now, not a lot of guys in here today are going to brag to you about the food, but the worms absolutely love it. Last year, we were able to process almost 40 tons of food waste. Now, that represents a significant savings, but it also greatly reduces the amount of fossil fuels being used to transport this material. Our second objective is fertilizer production. Worms make amazing organic fertilizer. In the industry, they call it worm castings, but that's just a fancy name for worm poop. We harvest that material and use it as a soil builder. This is important because in the U.S. we lose 1.7 billion tons of topsoil every year through erosion. We also send over 36 million tons of food waste to our landfills, where it decomposes and releases methane, a greenhouse gas that, according to the EPA, is at least 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Worms have the ability to convert that food waste back into topsoil, and they do it through a mesophilic or low-heat process that releases significantly lower amounts of greenhouse gas. Now, at the end of our second year, our director of prisons, Mr. Pachoki, bought us an air pump and taught us how to make liquid fertilizer from the castings. Then the Sustainability in Prisons Project bought us a microscope, and we began exploring the microbiology world of worms. This is where it gets seriously cool. In the gut of a worm are these microbes, and they're beneficial to plants. They help with nutrient uptake. Now, we harvest those microbes and put them in a nutrient-rich environment, and they multiply by the billions. The end result is something we call worm tea, a living organic fertilizer that's like nothing else on Earth. There's literally trillions of microbes in every bottle. We produce thousands of gallons of this stuff every year and give it away. Now, our third objective is to breed worms. If you need to run a worm farm, you need lots of worms. But they're expensive, like $20 a pound expensive. So we developed an extensive breeding program. Last year, we were able to export almost 2 million worms to other prisons to start worm programs at Walla Walla and Stafford Creek. So that's where we've come from. But where are we going from here? Excuse me. Anyway, in Washington, we spend millions of tax dollars every year disposing of our food waste. Worms are a viable solution to that problem. But there's a big obstacle: startup cost. Commercial bins are really expensive. If we hadn't built our program from scraps, it would have cost us over $150,000 just to get started. We have a solution to that obstacle right here. I visualize a time when the worm farm is making worm bins, raising worms, and providing fully stocked food waste disposal units to every school, hospital, institution, and public facility in Washington State. We could do it for pennies on the dollar, and at the same time, we could fund sustainability programs throughout the state prison system. There is a potential for tremendous savings here. Now, that's good news for you taxpayers and prison officials. But to be honest with you, most inmates are not terribly motivated to save the prison money. So what has us out there every month digging through tons of food waste? Well, that's the second part of the story that I want to share with you. You see, I believe that programs like the Worm Farm and many other sustainability projects have the ability to break the cycle of recidivism and promote rehabilitation. I want to share with you today the power of sustainability. Now, one of the core principles behind sustainability is this idea that if you'll take care of your environment will take care of you. It's about fostering relationships that are mutually beneficial, where all parties are healthy. Now, this next part may shock you. Most of the people who wind up in prison were not applying sustainable principles to their life before they got here. I know. There's not a lot of guys sitting next to you that are going to tell you that they thoroughly weighed all the pros and cons prior to robbing that bank and found that it was mutually beneficial to all parties. Nobody comes to prison as part of their 10-year plan. But sustainability programs have the ability to change the thinking processes that led to incarceration in the first place. There's a profound transition that can take place when somebody who's been cast out of society and branded as an offender is given the opportunity and responsibility to nurture living things and to give back to their environment. I've seen inmates change their way of thinking. I've seen them go to the library and study to make a program better. I've seen big old tough guys get all warm and fuzzy holding a baby rabbit. I've seen guys take care of a bin full of worms like they were personal family members. This is the power of sustainability. Sustainability can also have a dramatic effect on recidivism. There's a great book out there called Doing Time in the Garden by James Giler. It tells the story of Rikers Island, the largest jail complex in the U.S. Now, Mr. Giler describes a place that's well known for gang violence, and he reports a recidivism rate of 65%. But in the midst of this razor wire complex, he found a bright spot: the Rikers Island Greenhouse Project. Now, this program teaches horticultural therapy and skills at gardens and greenhouses within the complex. It then helps inmates get jobs through an internship program called the Green Team. Rikers Island reports that inmates who graduate from the Greenhouse Project and complete the Green Team internship have a recidivism rate of just 12%. 12%. Do you know what prison administrators across the nation would give for a 12% recidivism rate? Sustainability programs have the ability to change thinking processes, develop relevant skills, and foster relationships with the outside world that can break the cycle of recidivism. This also is the power of sustainability. We talk all the time about sustainability in our culture, but what would happen if we took those basic principles of sustainability and applied them to everything that we do in prison? What would happen if we built the truly sustainable prison? You know, when I was a kid, I loved to go to the dump with my dad. There was an old man named Charlie, and he ran the dump, and he always had a table full of stuff that he'd found. For a couple of quarters, I could bring home a treasure, as long as Mom didn't find out where it came from. But as we were driving away and I was playing with my newfound toy, we never gave a second thought to the garbage we'd just dropped off. Back then, nobody was talking about global warming or holes in the ozone layer. Nobody told me that the batteries to my broken radio-controlled car were going to slowly leak toxins into the earth for decades. It was just the way you got rid of your garbage. You took it to the dump, dropped it off, and forgot about it. Today, we take a completely different approach to getting rid of our garbage. The old dump doesn't exist anymore. It's being replaced by sanitary landfills, and we have recycling centers. Items that can be repaired, reused, and recycled are put back into productivity. The sustainable prison would operate off these same models. Unfortunately, across America, there are too many prisons that are still using the old city dump model. Lock them up and throw away the key legislation has led to warehouses filled with people who could be contributing so much, but unfortunately, all too often, are simply doing time. In the same way that we didn't used to consider the cost of throwing our garbage in a hole in the ground, not enough attention is being given to what happens to a person after they come to prison. There are men and women in our prisons today who could be productive members of society right now, but still have decades of incarceration left, or worse yet, lifelong sentences. And there are inmates getting out this week who are completely unprepared for life outside these walls. The sustainable prison would have a mechanism for identifying those individuals whose continued incarceration is no longer a benefit to society, and redirect resources to those inmates who need more tools to be successful. At the new sanitary landfill, they don't hold on to material longer than is necessary, just because somebody thinks it's garbage. The sustainable prison would be a recycling center, a place that changes behavior patterns and develops the tools needed to be successful. So how do we get there? Well, our theme today has been turning keys, and that's a good start. We need to open the doors to the prisons, not just to let those individuals out who are now ready to be productive members of society, but also to invite the community in. We need community partners to work with us and exchange ideas and solve complex issues. We need more groups like the Sustainability in Prisons Project and the Green Team. These folks are modern-day heroes, but they're too few and far between. These programs need funding and support, but more importantly, they need to be a central component of our sustainable prison. We need to harness the power of sustainability. You know, prisons by their very nature are not nurturing places. They can be cold and dreary with 20-foot concrete walls. But if you walk next to that wall and look up, every once in a while you'll see a crack and a little plant that's grown against all odds. I found my crack in the wall a few years ago when I was given the opportunity to build a program here that has the power to impact both the environment and the lives of prisoners. This is going to sound weird, but every morning, the bars to my cell open, and I go out to the worm farm. I feel like I have 6 million worms counting on me every single day. I get to train men in sustainable principles, and my hope is that it will have a lasting effect on their lives. I get asked all the time, what is your deal with this worm farm? Why are you so passionate about it? It's just worms, man. I answer with one word: relevance. Relevance. Everybody wants to feel relevant, that their lives and actions count for something, especially prisoners, who in our society have lost virtually all relevance. Sustainable programs can restore that relevance. In the worm farm, we take great pride in the fact that we're making a significant impact on the environment. In the midst of this horrible thing we call imprisonment, we're making a real difference. This is the power of sustainability. Change is hard work. We know that. It wasn't easy to build a worm farm, and it certainly won't be easy to build a sustainable prison. We had to overcome huge obstacles, and if I'm honest with you this afternoon, we still have some big obstacles in front of us, every day on both sides of the bars. But we've set aside our biases and we're working together to build something significant that works. And look what we've accomplished. Imagine what we could do if we made sustainability a central component of our prisons. Imagine the lives that could be impacted if men and women were given the tools for success. Imagine the mothers and fathers that could have their children back. Imagine how many crimes wouldn't happen if we could reduce recidivism by just 10 or 20%. Imagine what prisons could give back to their communities. Here's the thing. If we can start to imagine it, we'll begin to believe it. And if we can believe it, we will achieve it. That is the power of sustainability. Thank you.